Is this the Q&A session? Is there any questions? Yeah.
I have two questions about the kilesas. The first question is, I can see greed and hatred quite clearly. It's very tangible, whereas delusion it's for me is less tangible. Could you help explain delusion in a way where I can see it more clearly? So that's the first question.
My favorite answer to that question is the Luang Por Chah answer. So somebody asked Luang Por Chah that exact question, and he said, "You're riding a horse and asking, where is the horse?" It's delusion is really what's behind all of our greed and anger and all of those tangible things, but it's the root that we can't see. So it's the horse that we're riding, and it's causing its delusion is what is conditioning our intentions and our reactions to things. So delusion and ignorance, these are related. In order to see it, I think it's very difficult to see because, say, when somebody comes to the monastery and they want to ordain and they become pakao, they become anagarika, and they're really sincere. Please train me. I want to be monk. I want to be good monk. Anything I'm doing wrong, please tell me. So I said, okay. So we train them, and they might become samanen and then monk. But then everybody gets to a certain point where the things that they're really doing wrong are the very things they don't want to give up. So that's where they reach the edge, or what we would call the threshold of training. So most people are very sincere. I want to do everything properly. Please tell me if I'm doing something wrong. But then at a certain point, like myself as a teacher, I might see something in a monk, and that's the very thing they don't want to give up. And if I point it out to them, they won't like it, and it will be painful. And that's delusion. Yeah. So delusion is, try to see delusion. We have to see the things that we don't want to give up. We have to see the things that it's our hidden faults that we don't want to see. And the very best type of teacher, like Luang Por Chah, they were able to point out people's hidden faults, the ones that we don't want to give up, the ones that we think it's not a problem. The teacher doesn't know what he's talking about. You know, that's not a problem. That's okay that I do that. That's the thing we don't want to look at. So that's delusion. But also, we can be very forgiving with ourselves, because if delusion is, and ignorance, if fully given up, that's arhat. That's arhatship. That's the end. That's the end of the practice. And that's what we're practicing for. So, but at first we have to see, oh, I'm riding this horse. I didn't even know where it was taking me. It was running all over the place. And
in order for me to see the horse more clearly, what would be a common horse for monastics and a common horse for lay people?
Well, the horse is the same. It doesn't matter if you have robes or not. The horse is tanha, and it's making us suffer. So actually the horse is avijja, is ignorance, but it's the root of tanha. Maybe tanha is like the saddle, and it's different depending on your temperament, depending on your nisai. Sometimes people have more problem with anger. That's what we call the dosa charit. Some people have more problem with greed. That's what we call like a raga charit or loba charit. Some people have more problem with delusion itself, which which is moha charit. That means that you confused a lot, don't really know what to do. One quality of moha charit is that they can swing between very strong anger and very strong greed very quickly. That's a quality of moha charit. And whereas like dosa charit, they could be angry and just be angry for days, just without not being, they're just stuck in their anger. Or a raga charit is stuck in some sort of greedy state for it, never get tired of it. And these have some positives as well. There's like the positive side of the greed type is the saddha charit. So if the greed person practices, they can become saddha charit. They can go into saddha, which is a wholesome quality. The dosa charit, if they practice, they can become very, have a lot of metta, and they can become like a panya charit, like have great wisdom, penetrating wisdom. Lungpo Kao was one of those people. He was a very strong anger type, and then later in his life was known for his unbelievable metta. And then you have the interesting one. It's called the Bhuti Charit, which is a lot of Westerners have this. Is the like the scientific mind, or the mind that can't stop thinking ever. It's like constantly problem solving. So that's the Bhuti Charit, where it's like Bhuti, as in not Buddha, but Buddhi, which is like study, scientific study, analysis. The mind of analysis is the Buddhi Charit. And for the Buddhi Charit, they're supposed to practice Anapanasati to help to stop the distracted thinking. Moha Charit is supposed to stay with a teacher because they need to be told what to do. They can't really figure it out for themselves. So to see the horse more clearly, you just have to know your own character more clearly. Although we don't want to try to figure out like, what charit am I? I have all these defilements. I think I'm all of them. I'm all of the charit. So sometimes we might think that, but one of them will be more prominent. Everybody has all of those qualities, but one will be more prominent. And interestingly, Lungpo Panyawado, the Luksit of the student of Longta Mahabua, he said that for most people, you're the opposite charit of what you think you are. So it's tricky. That to see the delusion, to see the horse of delusion. Delusion is also connected with atta, with the sense of self, of who we think we are. So it's really what delusion can be, what's behind our deeply held beliefs and assumptions about ourselves. Yeah. So it's not easy to see it clearly. Yeah. But we just keep practicing. To see delusion, you need panya, which is to have panya, we need some samadhi at least. The mind needs to be still to start to see the blip in the mind that the delusion is causing. The delusion is under the surface, but it's causing everything. Yeah.
The second part of my question is about charit. So if we think we know we're angry or we're greedy, usually we just put it down and we go back to our object of meditation. But I'm thinking sometimes that because of the nature of the charit is so different, is there a different way to put it down?
Well, the Buddha did talk about different practices for different people. And the amazing thing about the Buddha, and why, it's hard for us to practice because we don't have the Buddha. We do have the Kruba Ajahns, but even then, they aren't quite the same as the Buddha, because the Buddha knew perfectly what was the right practice for each person. And that would vary greatly. As a general rule, he would say metta practice will help the dosa charit. So if you're a dosa charit, you really want to do a subha practice. You really love looking at corpses. You really love looking at dead bodies. But the Buddha said, no, that's not the practice for you. It's just going to make it worse. So he said, metta is the practice for them. The greed type, they really love practicing metta. It's really great. But the Buddha said, no, you need to do a subha. You need to think about corpses. You need to think about death. And they don't want to. So sometimes the practice we don't want to do because it goes against our own charit, our own type, our own character type. Yeah. So there's a story of, just to show you how many different practices there was the son of the goldsmith who ordained, and they tried to teach him a subha. So he was really dangjai, really wanted, very sincere, very much wanted to ordain and practice as much as he could. So he ordained, and they gave him some old robes, and like Sariputta and the other disciples tried to teach him like a subha practice, and his practice was not developing. And so eventually he went to the Buddha, and the Buddha said, oh yeah, okay, so we need to get him some different robes, get him the softest, nicest, most beautiful robes, and make him comfortable, give him a nice kuti. And then the Buddha gave him a pure white piece of cloth, and gave him the practice of just holding the cloth and from time to time rubbing his thumbs across the cloth. And that was the practice the Buddha gave him. And the Buddha told the other monks, he said, for his last 500 lifetimes, this guy has been a goldsmith, and he can't see a subha. He can only see beautiful. He thinks everything is beautiful. So the way to help his practice is that we make him very comfortable, make everything very nice, and give him this piece of white cloth, and he just rub his fingers on it. And then after time, the cloth starts to become discolored, and then he achieved arhatship. So it's the Buddha would know that kind of thing, that would be helpful for that kind of person. But for us, we don't have that. So sometimes we have to try and practice for a long time and figure out what is going to work for us. Yeah. If we're very fortunate, then we have a teacher that can help us. Yeah. But in the end, we have to figure it out.
My question is about the quote of Luang Pu Sha that you state in the afternoon session. If you would like to meditate or not, you have to meditate. If you would like to practice or not, you have to practice. Would you please clarify what does he mean exactly deeply? Thank you.
Yeah, and when it is said like you said it, that's not quite how he said it. It was more like, when we want to practice, we practice. When we don't want to practice, we practice. So sometimes we will want to practice, but sometimes we don't want to practice. But if it's time for the meditation, then we go and do that anyway. We practice. Yeah. The meaning is that we need to learn about all of our different mental states. That's like the delusion. So if we don't want to practice and we just sit there and think, I don't want to be here, but still we're practicing. So we get to know that mental state, that negative mental state. So it's we want it to be good all the time. We want to meditate and feel good. And this is just natural, but it's not going to be good all the time. And it's not that way for anybody. Sometimes it's going to be very difficult, but we still need to get to know those difficult states. So it's very much like going to work. Like if you only meditate when you want to meditate, that's like only going to work on payday. So he's like, well, I'm only going to work today because I'm getting paid today. But then you don't get paid very much because you only worked one day. You have to work all those other days. That's not payday. And you're not enjoying it because you're not getting any money. But then when you get to payday, you get bigger payoff, bigger payback. So when you overcome those obstacles, you make much greater progress in your practice. But it's very hard to do on our own, almost impossible. That's why we have to have teachers and monasteries and friends and retreats. The retreat will make it so that, I don't want to go to the meditation right now, but everybody else is going and they're going to see that I'm not there. So I have to go. So the deeper meaning is that's the way to make progress. Yeah. That's the metta of the Kruba Ajahn. So sometimes we think metta is just when people are nice to us all the time. But like that kind of metta is painful, but it's actually for our own good.
Can I ask you? Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Sorry about this. Just want to ask for some more explain about keeping the mind in the normal stage. What do you mean by that? The normal stage. Thank you.
Well, I think it just means just be normal. like I could give having been a monk for 20 years, I've seen lots of different things happen with people with practicing. And sometimes, somebody has maybe like some sort of samadhi experience, but it's kind of like off, or maybe there's no panya together with it, or somebody stops sleeping and they practice so much they stop sleeping, and then they come to you and they're kind of, Ajahn, and their kind of eyes are kind of big, and they say, I want to tell you about how great my practice is going. It's like, oh no, this is going to be difficult. And so that's like not normal state. Like, so if we just stay balanced, it's like samam sama, staying even, staying balanced. And that's why we have to practice skillfully. At first we might think, if I just, meditate all day, sit, walk, that's going to be the best no matter what. But then sometimes if we do that and the mind isn't ready for it, we can kind of like get into some state where we're not peaceful. So we have to be skillful with our practice. There's a time for sitting meditation. There's a time for walking meditation. And yes, it is good to do that a lot. But also it's good to take a break and have some tea in the evening. And when we're not meditating, then our mind will naturally start to think about, how did our practice go? So that's the development of wisdom. And then like, once our mind starts to get more clear, when we go to lay down at night, we can be thinking Butto, Butto, Butto as we're lying down. And we go to sleep and we might have a dream connected with the practice. And then we wake up and we feel good. And we go to Tam Wat Chow, we want to practice. That's like being in a very normal state. But if we decide, okay, I'm going to go for it, Nibbana right now. And people would go to Lungpo Cha and do this, like, especially the Westerners. And at the beginning of the Pansa, we have these 13 practices that are allowable for monks called the Dutangas, where we might just eat only out of the bowl, or like do sitter's practice where you never lie down, you sleep sitting up. And Luang Por Cha would say, okay, if anybody wants to do any Dutanga practices, please come let me know about it. So he knows what people are doing. And so he had one of the new Western monks. That's okay. So are you gonna take on any Dutanga practices? And I'll take on all of them. He said, well, it's actually not possible to take on all of them because some of them actually cancel the other ones out. So you have to kind of decide. But he said, for you, I don't think you should do any of them. And just kind of be normal. Just kind of calm down. So we do, I think being normal also means like we have to realize that practice, we learn how to relax. We learn how to be at ease. So it's not just fighting as hard as possible. And we might listen to teachings of, say, like Tanajan Mahabua. And if we misunderstand, we might think like we need to like I was listening to an Ajahn Mahabua talk one time, and he was saying like, you just have to beat the kilesa when they're down and whip them and wring their neck. And you might think, oh, I need to be like angry at myself. And so actually somebody went to Ajahn Mahabua one time and said, so are you saying with all your fiery teachings, are you saying that I need to like hate the kilesa and destroy the kilesa and be angry at the kilesa? And Ajahn Mahabua said, if you're angry at the kilesa, they'll just laugh at you. So because he said the way you destroy the kilesa is to be peaceful. So it's sometimes we can misunderstand as especially as us Westerners, we don't know Thai as well. We might hear an Ajahn Mahabua talk and we might think, oh, I need to be really tense. And that's not what he's saying. But he just had his own character, his own way of speaking. But even Ajahn Mahabua wants us to be peaceful. So but then the way to be peaceful is to develop samadhi and wisdom. And wisdom is very normal because I think of wisdom as like the hand in the fire. So our body has wisdom. If we put our hand in a fire, it will automatically draw back. We don't have to think about it. And that's normal because the body doesn't want pain. So when we put our hand in the fire and it's burning and it's hot, and we don't need to consult an instruction manual about what to do when our hand is burning in a fire, it automatically comes out. So wisdom is like that as well, but we don't yet have the wisdom. But when the mind sees the suffering, that the mind sees that it is in the fire of suffering, it will want to come out automatically without having to look at the Dhamma books, without having to look at the suttas. That's why we say, like, when we have defilement or anger, we don't just drop it. We can't just drop it because we can't just get rid of it. We have to have wisdom. The way we develop the wisdom is we see the suffering of it when the defilement comes up. If we see the suffering, the heart will start to automatically want to let go of it. But it doesn't yet believe that the heart doesn't yet believe the Dhamma. It doesn't yet believe that it's suffering. It still sees that anger is helping us somehow. It still sees that deep down inside, we think greed is helping us somehow. So, but to be in the completely normal state, like the Luang Por Chah would say, like the Arhat is completely normal. Like they're the most normal person. He would also say, like, you have to know, not sure. Like, you say there's the 4 stages of awakening: Sotapan, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arahant. And the Sotapanna And this is a very Luangpo Cha teaching. So the Sotapanna knows that everything is not sure. The Sakadagami knows that the once returner knows that everything is really not sure. The Anagami knows that everything is really, really not sure. And the Arhat knows that everything is completely not sure. So they're the completely free, completely open. So I think in brief, it kind of just means to be normal, act normally. We don't really make a show of our practice. And even if we have some sort of deep samadhi or some sort of profound, deep experience, we don't make an outward show of that, but we say gepwai, like we keep it inside and we picharana, we contemplate it. Yeah.
I listen and listen that the mind has no location, but when I see the mental state, it seems like it's going out from the heart.
Mm.
Yeah, and but the mind has no location. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's taught the mind has no location, but if you see a mental state, it feels like it's coming out from the heart, or it feels like it's coming out from a certain area. So that's good to see as well. That's mindfulness of the body. So when we have a mental state, we can, if we're practicing kayakata sati, the mindfulness of the body, then we can see that it might be located somewhere. I remember having a very strong emotional state one time and trying to locate it. Where was it located in the body? And it was actually like in the center of my head. And different mental states are going to be, or sometimes we might have a certain mental state, but then it's causing tension in our hand or in our face. And it's good to see that. But the mind itself, sometimes it's taught it has no location. That can be helpful. That's more like contemplating the not self nature of the mind. The mind is anatta, so it isn't really located necessarily anywhere. This is the non-material aspect of the mind. I mean, sometimes you could say maybe the vinyan is located at the heart, the chitta that takes rebirth and has ignorance. Perhaps we could say it's in the heart. And sometimes Kruba Ajahn would teach that the heart is like the one that has the intention, and then the brain is like figures out how to do the bidding, how to follow the orders from the heart. Or the heart has those three root defilements: greed, hatred, delusion. And then the mind figures out how to fulfill those defilements. And so it's not a problem if you feel like it's coming from somewhere. But ultimately, the mind, you could say the mind has no location. Yeah. Yeah. The mind that has no location, it's more like, so you say like, oh, when you have a mental state, you feel like it's coming out from the heart. But the mind that has no location is that which is noticing that. So it's deeper. That's the awareness. Yeah, that's Buddho. That's also Dhammo. So it has no location, no center. Yeah. Ignorance has a center. Atta has a center, but the Dhamma has no center. That's the Dhamma of no reference point. Ignorance and Atta is a reference point. Yeah. So when you read these inspiring teachings of like Lungta Mahabua shedding tears in amazement of the Dhamma, he's talking about when he broke through to the Dhamma completely. He says there was no more reference point, no more thing he could say that before it broke apart, it was incredible brightness, but then he said that was ignorance, and then it broke apart and there was no reference, and then that was the Dhamma. That's look sung mak put yak picharana na picharana.
All my life, I've been running around from morning till bedtime. And I try to attend every retreat as many times as possible. It just gives me a break. The reason I'm attending the retreat is to train myself. If one day I have to be a bedridden person, and I could use the experience of the retreat, how to cope with suffering, how to endure my suffering, and to follow experiences of Bhavana Buddha before I will go away. But what I'm wondering is the body is not mine, and the vijnana is not tangible. I just don't understand where the vijnana would go, because I cannot see, and it's not mine either. And people always looking forward to going to heaven. Nobody wants to go to hell. If you are a criminal or you are a drug dealer, you don't want to go to hell. Everybody wants to go to heaven. Who could certify the vijnana where to go? Because it's not me anymore. Thank you, Prajan.
Well, that's the thing. That's kamma. So the teaching of the Buddha is that when we die, the rebirth is conditioned by our kamma, by our good and bad kamma that we've done in this life, our good and bad actions in this life, and also all of our previous lives. There's various things that will, our mental state at the time of death will condition it as well. But if we've done a lot of good things in our life, the Buddha used the analogy of the jar with oil in it. When his lay disciple, Mahanama, who was already Sotapan, he was worried about his death because he went to the Buddha, he says, sometimes I go to the market and my mind is fung san. So even though he's Sotapan, if you're Sotapan, you can still be fung san. It's possible, according to the suttas. And the Buddha said you don't have to think about it, because even if your mind is distracted, because you have developed so many wholesome qualities, that even if you die when your mind is distracted, even if you die and you're not meditating, it's like the jar that has oil in it. When it sinks to the bottom of the river and it breaks, the oil can only go up. It cannot go down. If you've devoted your life to unwholesome qualities, it's like the jar with rocks in it. When the jar breaks, the rocks sink. They can only go down, they can't go up. So yes, everybody wants to go to heaven, but I think this is where we need to reflect on kamma, because unless we're a very, very advanced practitioner to the point where we could choose our rebirth, which is very rare, or the pra-arahant, which is no longer reborn. That's also another something that's fun to think about, is why is the arahant not reborn anymore? Why is it their last life? So the kamma, the good and bad kamma, still has Chelate. When we talk about chelate is good and bad. It's not just bad. But the chelate is what keeps us being reborn over and over again. So yes, it's better to go to heaven. It's best to attain Nibbana and not be reborn again. That's the best. But everybody's at their own stage of the path in Sangsang, in Wata Sangsang, in Samsara. So not all of us will be able to finish our practice in this lifetime, but we keep moving forward. We keep making progress as Buddhists. We just keep going. It doesn't matter how long it takes, how many lifetimes. The thing about karma is we say we go to heaven, but it's actually not us. It's just the experience. There's no vinyan that goes up to heaven. That's not the right way to think about it. But there is an experience of heaven and hell. The awareness experiences it, but it's not to be thought of as like a soul or a vinyan that goes up and down. You could say it's the karma itself. The karma itself is our experience. And so the good karma, it naturally goes up. That you could also say that because this is a very profound topic of Dhamma when we talk about death and rebirth. And it's normally the first question that people ask when they come to the monastery in the West is like, well, if there's no self, what's reborn? Well, the Buddha talked about all of his past lives. So somebody came to the Buddha one time and they said, like, so what happens when somebody's reborn? If you say not self, what is reborn? Is it the body? The Buddha says, no, is it the feelings? Is it the perception? Is it the sankhan? Is it the vinyan? And the Buddha says, no, that's not what's reborn. And so they're like, well, I don't understand. And the Buddha said, yeah, it's difficult to understand. But he said, it's like a candle when you die. So this rebirth is like your vinyan is like a flame on a candle. The candle is your body. So the vinyan is dependent on this body and it's burning. And then when you die and take rebirth, it's like lighting another candle. So on that second candle, can you say it's the same flame? Is it the same flame or is it a different flame? You can't really say, but it's kind of a different flame, but it looks the same. So that's like rebirth, according to not self. It's like going from one candle to another. The flame it will look just like the other flame, but it's not the same flame. It's different. And when they exchange, that's like death, so that there's disconnected for a moment, and then it's in the new one. And this has happened for all of us millions and millions and millions and millions of times, billions of times. But we can't remember. Most of us can't remember. I can't remember. Yeah. But have faith that this is the way it is. Yeah. But if you've lived for a long time with a lot of wholesome qualities, then we don't have to worry about our rebirth. But if we do a lot of bad things, then we have to be worried about we need to change our habits to be better. Yeah. So. If a very good person, even if they mess up and do something wrong, like so if someone who's very generous or someone who does a lot of good deeds, the Buddha said if they do something wrong, like maybe they do something bad once or twice, the Buddha said that is for them, it's almost like nothing because they're not going to keep doing those bad things. They're a very good person. That's their character. So you get angry or something one time. It's not as bad as if the Buddha said, if you have somebody who kills living beings, steals, and so on, they don't have the precepts. If they get angry or if they do something bad, it's far worse because they will keep doing it. They will not stop. Yeah. But if you're a very good person, then it tends to go only one direction. It tends to go up. Yeah. So those of us who are practicing and really keeping the precepts and really trying to train our mind, we don't have to worry. Yeah. Even though there might be some obstacles. Yeah. But it's very profound, very difficult to answer that question. Yeah. We need Longpo Cha here to answer it. See, I wonder what he would say. Sometimes we can have the Kruba Ajahn, like it's not that uncommon these days to be able to see where somebody was reborn. But then, even then, it's the reason they teach that is to say, well, that's because of good actions or that's because of metta, so we can cultivate it for ourselves. When the monk Tan Panyawudo died at Wat Bunyawat, there was a disagreement. Like one Kruba Ajahn said he was born at this level of heavens, and then another Kruba Ajahn said no, it was this other level of heavens. And it was kind of a big deal that there was this kind of disagreement, like, well, which one is it? And then there was another Kruba Ajahn who said, look, he's dead. That's all you need to know. And I liked that. I liked that reflection. Like, just don't worry about it. Doesn't really matter, whether he's at this level or that level. It's all good. But just know that that body is gone, and that being known as Tampaniwudo is gone. Whatever being re-arose is a different being. It's not him anymore. That's anatta. We can gain insight into anatta through rebirth. When we're reborn, if we become deva, that's not us anymore. So if Pung dies and get reborn as deva, it's not Pung, it's some other being. Yeah. That's when the Anathapindika died and was reborn as deva. I think Tavatingsa deva, maybe Tusita deva. I can't remember which level, but some sort of deva. And the Buddha referred to it as the deva that was Anathapindika, but is different being now. And that deva could barely remember its life as Anathapindika because as deva had so much bliss and happiness. And when Sariputta went to the heavenly realm, or what was it? It was one of the monks who had psychic, maybe Mahamoggallana, went to go check out this deva, and that deva barely recognized the monk and only raised one finger in recognition of that monk, even though previously it was Anathapindika who was one of the biggest supporters of the Sangha. So perhaps that's the drawback of the deva realm, is there's so much happiness that sometimes we might not recognize things. We might not be able to see so clearly. We're past 5. One more quick question. Okay. Okay. Pana.